So, hi everyone, welcome to the Global Forum, this time dedicated to poverty in Africa. Let me just make you a very brief and small introduction about the Templar Corps. The Templar Corps is a group of men and women with a Templar background, organized locally in units spread across the world, ready to put their energy, passion, and intelligence to the service of mankind. We want to make the difference. We show that the traditional values of spiritual chivalry they can be lived in the 21st century with the same value and positive impact as they had in the past. We want to give bread to those who are hungry, give hope to those who despair, give voice to those who are silent. Just find out more about the Templar Corps by going to templarcorps.org, and you will find a way to subscribe to our newsletter and know more about the work that we're undertaking. Now, let's talk a little bit about the theme. Africa's poverty situation is dynamic. Some of the major concerns that are synonymous with poverty are health, hunger, and water. Here are some facts about each of these pertaining to Africa. Health. More than 50% of Africans suffer from water-related disease such as cholera and infant diarrhea. Every 30 seconds, an African child dies of malaria. And tuberculosis is the leading AIDS-related killer. And in some parts of Africa, 75% of people with HIV also have TB, tuberculosis. In terms of hunger, 35% of the population in only four of the African countries are undernourished. 24 to 34.9% of the population in 10 to 12 African countries are also undernourished. Water is a big problem everywhere, not only in Africa, but in Africa we have 783 million people that do not have access to clean or safe water, and 37% of those people live in sub-Saharan Africa. Really, in Africa, there's a big difference between sub-Saharan and above Sahara countries. Less than 1 in 3 people in sub-Saharan Africa have access to proper toilets. The standard water container that Africans use to transport water manually weighs about 40 pounds when full. So that is about 10 kilos. The UN estimates that the sub-Saharan Africa alone loses 40 billion hours per year collecting water, the same as an entire labor year for France. Poverty in Africa is predominantly rural. Out of all the poor living in Africa, more than 70% of them live in the rural areas and rely on the land to provide for food. A lot of the aid that African countries need, especially in the sub-Saharan region, is agricultural based because it is the best way to address the issue. Sustainability is often the main goal of aid. Creating sustainable agriculture allows for greater quantities of food. There are many organizations out there that are joining together in order to fight the absolute poverty in Africa. Here are some numbers that may help you. Most of the most reliable numbers are not recent. This one goes up to 2013. The latest one I found was for 2018. We are in 2020 and there are big changes that happened in the last few months. But let's look at this one because this shows some trends which are startling. We can look at the number of people living in extreme poverty in East Asia and Pacific, Latin America, South Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa. And you can see that overall the trend has been lowering. Since the 80s, the number of people living in poverty, in the definition of poverty, which is living with less than $1.5 a day, you can see that pretty much in every region there has been some programs that have attacked the problem, and indeed we have seen lowering the numbers. But if you look at Africa, it's very startling that it doesn't seem to change. We even have this graphic that goes up to 2015. You have here the proper definition of what is living in poverty. And overall, the number of people living in poverty has been going down since the mid 80s. And people living in extreme poverty has been going down since after that, the beginning of the 90s. However, the trend in Africa does not follow this global trend. So this is really startling, and it demands our attention, because I think sometimes we have been insensitized to the problems in Africa. We have here data from 2018, which we see the percentage of people living in less than $1.9 a day, with very big disparities between, for instance, Egypt or Algeria or Morocco, which have economies very much tied with Europe, and then places like Congo, Nigeria, even São Tomé e Príncipe, with 32.3% of people living in a very, very, very small wage. And then we have this problem also that we have tackled in other forums that we have dealt with, namely about the homeless, which is we don't have reliable data for many countries. We don't see anything for Angola, Somalia, Eritrea, etc., and Libya. And some of the data that was used to compose this graphic in 2018, even that data may not be exactly comparable in some cases. So, but we see here really that Central Africa is one of the zones of Africa which has the most problems. We can see here a little bit more in detail. So if we look at, again, numbers from 2018, at the number of people living in extreme poverty, we can see that about half of them live in sub-Saharan Africa, 41%, and the other half in South Asia. And then the rest, which is about 20%, is spread out across East Asia, the Pacific, the Arab states, Latin America, and Central Europe and Central Asia. Our next forum will be dedicated to the question of poverty in Latin America and Caribbean, which has been also regionally growing in the last few years. But you can see that it doesn't seem that we dedicate the same time to the poverty in Africa as we dedicate to the poverty in Europe and in other places around the world. And it should demand our attention. Finally, this graphic, I think it's a very important one, because for the first time it brings a forecast of what COVID-19 could do to some of these populations. And COVID-19 may very well push additional people to poverty in all of these areas. I think that the impact in sub-Saharan Africa, with about 44.6 million people forecasted in this study from Oxfam, may be underplaying the problem, because at the moment, effectively, COVID hasn't had an impact as large in African countries as it has in India, in South America, and in Europe and the United States. But it is possible that it will get there. So I think that this estimate will be largely changed in the next few years. But this means that COVID will have an impact on the trends that we have seen before. So since the 80s, there have been many programs of international cooperation to try and stop poverty from growing, which has had an impact in most continents. But COVID-19 will really have a huge impact on those. And I think we should keep our eyes on these numbers for the next few years. So let me introduce our first guest, Frei Fernando Ventura. He's a banker, as he likes to introduce himself. Although he banks in powder milk, but it is banking, really. Uh, he's going to talk to us about two of his important works that he does in African countries. In this case, it is São Tomé e Príncipe, and he has a long-running work that is the powder milk of São Tomé, which we are going to talk about. And there's also the House of Betania, which is in the works at the moment. And it's something that I hope we will see growing and happening in the near future. You have here all the connections to the Banco de Leite, which is the powder milk bank in São Tomé. We encourage you to give donations. Don't donate directly through the Templar Corps. Do it to this account that we see here. It's very important that you understand that the Banco de Leite, although it is a bank of powder milk and needs, of course, the actual good, which is powder milk, that will help those most needed in São Tomé e Príncipe, it also needs some money, because you cannot transport powder milk across the world without spending money. And once you have a big donation of milk, then it is consumed and you need it again. So it is a running problem. Don't just give once, come often and give as much as you can. You have here all the contacts directly to Fray Fernando Ventura. Well, I will ask you, Fernando, to tell us a little bit about the Banco de Leite, and then I will be very provocative with a few questions that I think you may be able to
by all means, please. Well, first of all, my word of thanks to you, Lucia, and this initiative and this opportunity you're giving me to convey this message. My word of thanks also to the Templar Corps, of course, and everybody that is joining in to this world gathering almost. And well, thank you for allowing me to share this experience I've started almost 10 years ago, together with a huge number of anonymous people that have been helping us to carry on this ongoing miracle, and some other organizations that have joined in. It is something I really want to stress, and to thank all these people that for this last almost 10 years have been supporting me, have been behind. I'm just the front office of a huge amount of huge hearts that have been helping me to bring something to the islands of São Tomé and Príncipe. We started almost 10 years ago, trying to answer an emergency, food emergency that occurred in the orphanage of the main island almost 10 years ago. And since then, the help came, the first help came from the Azores Islands, from the milk factories in the Azores. Word of thanks and a big hug to my friend Luis Anselmo, and to these three companies, Bell, Insulac, and Unilate, the very first ones that said yes. My word of thanks also to a group, a gigantic group of young people, Solidart, it's the name. We have been working together for the last 10 years, conveying in this message. A word of thanks to a beautiful NGO, voluntary dentists that are working with us in São Tomé. I opened the door for them. They are doing a great, great job. The name is Mundo Sorrir. In Portuguese, it'd be the smiling world. Also for this other association we are working with in São Tomé and Cape Verde too, Sinergia from Braga, the parishes of Cargosa and Vale Maior. This another NGO we have been working together with, To Live Without Borders, in Portuguese would be Viver Sem Fronteiras, and the two municipalities that have been helping greatly, the municipality of Maia and Oliveira do Bairro. Locally, we try to work together with Caritas, with the House of Mercy, we call it in Portuguese, Santa Casa da Misericórdia de São Tomé, with the parishes of both islands. And all together, we have been able to put together this project. We are right now, as far as figures are concerned, we have been able to send 1,200 kilograms of milk powder every month. per year other consumables for kids and elderly people, we managed to send around 30 tons of merchandise to Sao Tome. We are talking about food, we are talking about school articles for kids, we are talking about medicines. Yesterday, we were able to send by plane. It costs a fortune, but we had to do it like that. Almost 300 kilograms of medicines that have to be flied in because it's impossible to
So
send
there's a huge group
in a
effort
container.
for that to happen, right?
Indeed,
It's
a
not
huge,
something
huge.
one person
No,
is able to do.
the lead, it was the Apipharma that took the lead of this, of the contacts with all the labs they've contacted, and yeah, I can only imagine the huge amount of work that it meant to send this 200 more kilograms of medicines to the islands. They arrived yesterday. It was Saturday, so only tomorrow, Monday, they will be able to bring them out from the customs facilities. So this is our reality. We try to answer as far as we can the needs for children and elderly people, and our big dream right now is to finish what we have started, which is the construction of the new Bethany House, Casa Betania in Portuguese, which is a structure that already exists in the Principe Island, but it's a very old structure made out of wood and in a very poor condition. So we desperately need to accommodate around 30 elderly people in this new structure. The land belonged to the diocese. Diocese offered the land, of course. We started the first stone on the 13th of March. And unfortunately, though the SARS-CoV-19 situation, the island was closed 5 days later. So now the work is going to start again. You were talking about the consequences of COVID in Africa, and we still don't see the results very clearly. Unfortunately, in São Tomé, we do see the results very clearly right now, because the main resource, income resource of the island, both islands, has to do with the tourism. And without flights, without tourists, the situation became very, very, very complicated. We had to send in the last 6 weeks. We were able to send 3 containers. The third container, we are going to send it on next Tuesday, 29th, with food, with supplies, with medical supplies, with COVID-19 protection systems and so on. So there was this rush and this need to answer the situation. This Bethany House is our dream right now. And the overall budget is huge, 317,000 euros. Right now, we still need around 150,000. In the last 6 months, the miracle happened, and from 317,000, we came down right now to 150,000. Small donations, small donations from people, some of them we don't even know who they are. We always try to contact the people that help us. We always insist in sending them the receipt, and mainly sending them all the needed information. As we say, somebody that gives us 1 cent or 1 million has the same right to know where this cent or this million went. So we insist on transparency, we insist on being clear where we get the money from and where the money goes. Of course, the expenses have to do with milk, have to do with transportation costs. We don't have the help of a Super Maritime, which is a company that sends our merchandise to São Tomé. We have very, very special prices, but nevertheless, it's we have this costs to pay for. So this is our reality. This is our dream. This is the milk bank of São Tomé. Not just milk, medicines, schooling material. We try to support and try to be there to be promoters of sustainability too.
Yes.
together with our friends in the Azores. One of our initiatives was the construction and the preparation of local people to learn how to grow crops and how do you say in English? Oh my God.
Português. Qual é a palavra?
Falta-me até em português. Estufas. Greenhouses.
Okay.
Greenhouse
Yes.
farming, and this group from the Azores Islands, 2 volunteers have been there building one of this huge greenhouse and teaching local people to grow vegetables, which it's very complicated to grow vegetables due to the climate. The sun is very, very hot, and when it rains, it pours down. So we need these greenhouses, not for the same purposes. We use the greenhouses in Europe or in other parts of the world, but these greenhouses are mainly huge umbrellas to protect the most fragile vegetables from the sun and from a heavy rain. So the word is to insist and to invest in small children, make them grow up with an appropriate feeding, with appropriate means to grow in a healthy way. We have our dentists with us, we have other volunteers with us, and try to give the local population the means to grant their survival for themselves, not just in a essentialistic way, but in a way of sharing the know-how, of sharing the whatever we can share with them to help people grow by themselves.
Very good. I have a few questions for you.
Please.
But before we go to that, we have Pierre Bertrand that is going to explain to us a project that he's promoting in Cameroon. And I'll get back to you in 5 minutes. Okay? Don't go away.
I won't.
I have many questions.
Thank you.
Pierre Bertrand, are you there?
Yes, I'm there, sir.
So please,
I'm with brother. If another brother will join us now.
Very good. Can you tell us then a little bit about the project in Cameroon?
The project in Cameroon is based about many actions. I have sent many information, but the way I can say is fight the poverty upstream. That's our objective, our action. Why can us fight the poverty upstream? The case we have with our brother Fernando is the fighting in downstream. What's the causes of poverty? If we can list the cause of poverty and fight them upstream, we can evite more and more poverty systems.
Yeah, you mainly talking about education, for instance, right?
Yes. About the project consists to give a chance to many children, poor children, and others arise from the fact that it has been found in Africa that the situation of the child in difficulty. Yes?
No, please speak. There was some interference here. Speak, please.
Yes, remain a matter of great concern despite the efforts of the government. In some of the Cameroonian cities, there are some private centers for poor children and children with disabilities. But the increasing number of migrants to big cities was in neighboring countries and the unstable social situation in some other neighboring cities, the lack of good education for these children and the lack of ongoing monitoring and evaluation of children only increase the number of children in distress. So on the other hand, the central Templar works for children that we call the court. You have any plants there, the two plants or the two structures
Yes.
will become a trademark of humanitarians. Not only because it's our mission or culture, because we are the soldier of ethical and moral assessment, or to promise a thing with providence, a set of channels of our visions of the humanitarians at place of human being in life. So the Central Templar Works for Children, consisting of 2 pavilions, will be reception centers, pediatric centers, education and training in humanitarian logic. Why not basic Templar and support for children in distress? It will have to basically throughout its 2 pavilions. Pediatric pavilion, which can give the chance to children to drastically reduce school dropout, social and primary health problems among the most disadvantaged children. This pavilion can also satisfy the basic human needs of disadvantaged children: housing, nutrition, clothing, education, and so on. The other children contribute to the food security of children, to education, participate in the educational supervision of children. The pediatric center contribute to the care of health, which is no other than an establishment with primary health service at the start. Is the very big problem in Africa. The primary health service is so difficult, is so costing, and creates more than death. So the coach, the Central Templar Works for Children, can facilitate the payment of these basic health procedures.
Very good, Bertrand. You have sent me some information in PDF. We'll have this available on the site, on the website, after our forum. People have here your contact, your email, also your WhatsApp and mobile phone number if they want to get in touch with you and get involved. I encourage people to get involved, to help you, because this is a very worthy endeavor, and the Templar Corps is with you all along the way. So we will give everyone news on your progression, and let's now go into the discussion. If you want to take part in the discussion, you just have to raise your hand and also contribute, because I'm going to be very provocative here. So
thank you, brother.
Thank you very much, Pierre Bertrand, for your presentation. It was very good, and we'll have the rest of the details on the website and on the report of this conversation. Okay?
Thank you. Okay.
Very good, Frei Fernando Ventura. My question is very simple. Why do you think that trends of poverty have been going down everywhere in the world, but not in Africa?
Pierre is right. According to me, there are mainly 2 reasons for this to happen. Africa became, unfortunately, after in the post-colonialistic era, became a playground. It was already a playground of the biggest powers in the world. I'm talking about the United States. I'm talking about the Soviet Union, now Russia, and I'm talking about China in the last 10 to 20 years. The causes have to do with 2 words: corruption and neo-colonialism. Corruption at all levels, fostered by these countries and fostered by all the countries that use many countries in Africa as laundries for dirty money, corrupting governments, creating huge debts that nobody will ever be able to pay, and in this way gain control of land, gaining control of the resources, depriving Africa from its main resources, and Africa is being stolen, it is being destroyed as far as the forests are concerned, as far as the main resources are concerned, as far as the even the oceans are concerned. There is a crime, a hidden crime nobody wants to talk about, which is the dumping of dangerous waste in the national waters of many African countries. The very first ones to tackle this issue, two Italian journalists, they were murdered in Mogadishu, Ilaria Alpi and Mirko Hrovatin, a Croatian cameraman and an Italian journalist. They were the first ones to denounce the European mafias all over the European country that use Africa as dumping sites for dangerous trash, for dangerous materials. Unfortunately, also in Portugal, this is also another secret of ours. Many of our dumps are being used. We are importing trash. We are welcoming dangerous trash from European countries. We are also in the hands of these mafias. Returning back to Africa, corruption and neo-colonialism. These are the two, the main reasons why Africa is still struggling. And this playground makes of poverty a collateral damage of their fight, a collateral damage of this, I don't know how to describe it, but Africa is the place where Africa, and unfortunately not just Africa, but it's the table around which those that produce weapons and ammunitions try to talk about peace. This is where we have.
Why don't we just, turn off the TV and forget about the problem? Maybe it'll go away. Why not?
That's what we have been doing, actually. We have soccer to entertain our evenings. We have the soap operas to entertain our useless hours. And we just close our eyes. We close our eyes around us in Europe, and we close our eyes back there. It would be very complicated.
Why is that not acceptable? Why do you think that's not acceptable? Why shouldn't people just ignore the problem? What do you think should people think about it? Should they get involved? Why should they get involved?
Either we save ourselves together or we die stupidly all together. There's a lack of awareness of this network of relationship, this network of humanity that we share. We don't mind to change our cell phone and our computer every year, for instance, but we don't even stop a second to think about these kids and that in the so-called Democratic Republic of Congo, for instance, have to die and have to suffer to go into the coltan mines for our PCs to work, for our mobile phones to work. We just close our eyes and just try to enter in the politically correct way of speaking, but we just close our eyes, for instance, the situation of the Talibans, these kids enslaved by his so-called Islamic communities. We don't dare to touch this because it's not politically correct.
But should we touch that?
Absolutely.
Should we do that? And why should we do that?
Because political correctness is just a way of being cowards, just a way of living without. It doesn't touch me. It's not in my backyard. So why should I care?
Isn't all the world and all humanity in our backyard anyway?
Absolutely, yes.
Is that part of the radio saying that whatever happens in Congo is happening to me?
It happens to me. Whenever a kid is killed, a part of me dies. We just keep silent. I've been struggling this last month to bring awareness here in Portugal about the situation in the northern part of Mozambique. Nobody talks
Oh,
about it.
yeah. I have family there. I know what's going on.
250,000 people that have left their homes. We don't know how many people were killed. Last week, there was this footage that went around on Facebook. I was one of the first to broadcast this footage. This lady, a naked
Terrible.
lady, running and being shot like a beast on the road. And Facebook blocked me for 15 hours because I dared to publish nudity. For those suckers,
Imagine that.
a naked woman being
Imagine
shot
that.
to death in the middle of a road was a display of public nudity. This is what political correctness means: stupidity and cowardness.
Well, what you do, it seems to take a lot of work. Intervening and helping change the situation with our effort, is it a preoccupation or is it an occupation?
It's an occupation that should preoccupy each one of us. We cannot change the world, but we can always try to change somebody's world. That's one of the mottos we have as far as we are concerned. We cannot change the world. We all wish we could change the world. We cannot. But we can always change somebody's world. And if each one of us would take care of another human being, the world will be a much better place. Unfortunately, we always will have to fight against the toilet paper stupidity. And what I call toilet paper stupidity is what happened in Portugal and in so many other countries. We talk about a pandemic and people go running after toilet paper. That's brilliant.
That wasn't just in Portugal. It happened
No,
everywhere.
unfortunately, it
In
was not.
Spain, it was amazing. And I don't see the relation
Italy, in the States,
between
everywhere.
one thing and the other, but why toilet paper? But people suddenly felt a need to have their asses covered for some reason.
We will die, but with very clean asses.
Exactly. Maybe that's what's going to happen. Well, I'm wondering where do you get the energy to fight these problems when you know you can't change the world, you can change somebody's world, yes, but where do you get the energy? Where should we all get that energy?
From one another, from paying attention to what's going on and trying to bring in other people also convinced that they can change somebody's world. Cannot just stay put like that. When you touch the situations, when Africa or when India or when I don't know, South America, it's not just an idea, geographical idea or a vacation dream. When you get to know the situation, when you touch the situation, when you have people there whose name and family name you know, whose situation you personally know, you cannot just stay put and wait for life to go by.
So you mean we can make a difference as individuals? We look at the overwhelming size of the problem, and we think, well, somebody should take care of that. Somebody should do something. But
yes, somebody.
Aren't we the ones that have to do something?
We are somebody. There's a story I used to illustrate this situation. It's this forest on fire. All the animals are running out of the forest, which is on fire, and there is small bird that is flying on the opposite direction towards the fire. And well, we talk about the elephant that looks up and says, "Where are you going?" The forest is on fire. What are you going to do? And I said, "Well, I'm gonna put off the fire." Yeah, but with that it's tiny beak, you can only bring a drop of water. And the bird answers, "Yes, I do what I can." And sometimes that's what we have to do. Even if it's just a little drop of water, it will make the difference. It will explain all the.
Let me open up the questions. We have about 10 minutes more. Time goes fast when we are having fun. This is not fun. This is preparing work. This is like when you prepare your books before going to school, put them on your, your rucksack, and then you go to school. This is what we're doing now. So we can relax for a moment and then let's go and really work hard. So who wants to ask some questions, tell us about your own reflections, your own ideas, and provoke us? Miguel?
Matos? Sim.
Yes, you have
Yes.
asked say something.
Okay.
Yes.
So I want to apologize to our guests and to the host, because I will put a question to Frei Ventura, but not in English, in Portuguese. The theme for us, for me, is very important to understand the things I want to say. Ok, Frei Ventura, Miguel Fabiana, aqui a questão parcialmente foi respondida pelo Pierre Bertrand, e tem a ver com onde devemos colocar a nossa ajuda na perspectiva deste fórum, não é? Na perspectiva deste fórum, ou seja, eu estou a fazer tudo por tudo para ajudá-lo em todos os aspectos, de todas as maneiras que me são possíveis, porque de facto as pessoas no terreno não podem estar à espera que as coisas de fundo e as fundações sejam colocadas e, entretanto, não comam. E, portanto, faz todo o sentido que haja quem se preocupe com esses aspectos, não são menores, antes pelo contrário. Okay? Mas há aqui um aspecto importante que é colocar a questão da resolução destes problemas na fonte. O irmão Pierre Bertrand falou na questão da educação e da formação, muito bem. Okay? Eu estou a tentar por outros canais, não só em São Tomé e Príncipe, mas também em São Tomé e Príncipe, eventualmente Cabo Verde, são aqueles que nos estão mais próximos do coração, quando o nosso coração, vamos lá ver, faz o que pode, ok? Faz o que pode, ok? E portanto, aqui a questão é criar infraestruturas de criação de riqueza, para dar algum poder às pessoas de escolha, poderem escolher, não é? Poderem ter opções na vida. Tentar levar pessoas que conhecem, como o caso das estufas, não é? Mas tentar levar para São Tomé pessoas que conhecem o cultivo do café, do cacau ou de outras culturas, porque o problema da monocultura é um problema grave. É uma coisa que eu estou a tentar fazer, levar para São Tomé e para Cabo Verde gente que noutros continentes, nomeadamente na América Latina, estejam dispostos a levar as suas produções e a levar os seus investimentos para lá. Mas, por outro lado, eu partilho, subscrevo e defendo aquilo que identificou como sendo as duas maiores causas, que é a corrupção e o neocolonialismo. Eu e o Luís Matos falávamos exatamente em off no início da conversa, e o Matos colocava a questão de, então, mas, pois é, a África parece que a pobreza, em vez de reduzir, como é igual no resto do mundo, a África aumenta a pobreza. E eu a primeira causa que lhe apontei foi essa, é o neocolonialismo, ok? E, portanto, colocar novas formas de produção, formas mais competentes ou mais atualizadas de produção e de produtos que se dão bem em São Tomé e Príncipe, que é o caso que estamos aqui a falar, pode levar a estas questões de neocolonialismo, pode levar a questões sensíveis, que às tantas haja quem não tenha um melhor entendimento da questão. É este o meu problema que eu me debato, que é, eu não sei se ao levar gente de outros continentes para São Tomé e Príncipe, para lá criarem riqueza através da agricultura, não da monocultura do cacau, nem necessariamente do café, mas de outras, ok? Não estar a levar para lá uma doença, que é a doença da corrupção e a doença do neocolonialismo. E, portanto, há que agir com cuidado nisto. A minha questão ao Frei Ventura é como é que entende quem está estando mais presente do que nós? Eu não estou no terreno, não é? Como é que entende que se podem eu não vou dizer combater, não é? Mas como é que se podem controlar estas questões no terreno de ajudar as pessoas sem levar para lá a doença da corrupção e sem levar para lá o neocolonialismo, que infelizmente para mim é a principal causa da desgraça africana. Eu nasci na Guiné-Bissau e, portanto, para além de não me serem estranhas, eu sou Pepel, ok? Sou um alentejano, Pepel ou um Pepel alentejano, de Bissau. Portanto, eu em África, quando perguntam és de onde? Sou de Portugal. Ah, então és alfacinha. Não, não, sou Pepel, ok? Sou Pepel, de Bissau. E, portanto, estas questões a mim tocam-me logo ali não é? No coração e nos pulmões e no fígado, em todo lado, não é? E a questão é esta mesmo, é como é que nós podemos ajudar sem incorrer no alastramento desta doença do neocolonialismo e desta doença da corrupção.
Sim, senhor. É estar atento a isso mesmo. É a atitude com que se fazem as coisas e as entidades locais com quem se fazem. Não estou a falar exclusivamente de São Tomé, nós trabalhamos também em Moçambique, trabalhamos em Cabo Verde, trabalhamos na Tanzânia, falo da Ordem dos Capuchinhos a que pertenço, estamos em quase todos os países africanos. A nossa forma de trabalhar tem sido, acima de tudo, a nível local, fazer formação e apoio a pessoas locais, ajudando-as com o seu trabalho e com o seu esforço a poderem construir a sua vida e a construir a sua história e o seu progresso pessoal e familiar. Temos em São Tomé exemplos brilhantes deste tipo de ação de muita gente que localmente tem feito a diferença. Tem havido um esforço de tantas organizações que no terreno são de facto, dão a mão àquilo que é o fundamental, que é aquilo que dizia o Bertrand, a formação, a educação e o treinamento, dizermos nós, dizermos em português. Capacitar as pessoas para, a partir da sua experiência. Eu aqui dou sempre o exemplo da ONG que pensou em pôr torneiras e água canalizada nas casas todas de uma aldeia em África. Mas as senhoras da aldeia, apesar de terem a torneira dentro de casa, continuavam a ir ao poço. Porque o poço era o lugar da memória da família, o poço era o lugar do encontro das mulheres da aldeia, que era o único espaço de liberdade que tinham. Ou seja, a partir daqui, o colonialismo é isto, é dar soluções para problemas que não existem, é dar respostas para perguntas que ninguém fez e é fazer aquilo que de facto não faz falta fazer. E assim se dá dinheiro a muitos corruptos, locais e internacionais, aqui não há virgens, são todas galdérias, nesta incapacidade de ouvir. A melhor intervenção, quando se parte ou quando se vai para outro país ou outra realidade, alguém que vai convencido que vai ensinar alguma coisa já vai a perder um zero. Vais aprender, vais ouvir, vais crescer com. E sentir com quem lá está, com as pessoas que lá estão, quais são as necessidades e as suas formas de crescimento. Então aí teremos transformado de facto também a forma de trabalhar, que infelizmente enferma não só a jusante, como a montante, daquilo que eu digo, que os pobres dão de comer a muita gente e enfeitam que se farta. Infelizmente temos, e isto é verdade, e está mais do que evidente mesmo em Portugal, temos autênticos fascínoras que fazem da solidariedade a forma legítima de roubar. Pelos vistos em Portugal são todos inimputáveis, aqueles que conhecemos são todos inimputáveis, as formas legítimas de roubar e de lavar dinheiro porco. A quantidade de dinheiro que é lavado por estas realidades obriga desde logo os Estados, por exemplo, que reconhecem às entidades o estatuto de ONGs e PSS, seja do que for, de controle das suas contas, coisa que não se faz, nem se faz a montante, nem se faz a jusante. Portanto, são formas brilhantes de, aparentemente, se fazer solidariedade quando aquilo que se está a fazer é roubo organizado e viver à conta dos pobres que continuam a dar de comer a muita gente. Felizmente, estas realidades corruptivas são uma minoria, mas são uma minoria que faz muito barulho, sobretudo uma minoria que faz barulho na consciência de quem eventualmente se poderia estar disposto a ajudar, mas que legitimamente tem o direito de desconfiar de tudo e de todos, porque cada pedra que se levanta sai uma minhoca, não é? E quem paga a fatura são os pobres, quem paga a fatura são sempre os mesmos.
For our English-speaking attendants, well, the question was very complex, but it had to do with the fact that maybe we are adding to the problem when we help and bring in corruption and go in and try to change a few things that shouldn't be changed, and go in with our culture to try and colonize other cultures. And in fact, that's one of the problems. That's one of the reasons why Africa is in this state. Go back to the recording. We'll have this section subtitled. If anyone else wants to pose some questions or tell us what they are thinking, please just raise your hand. I can give you the word.
Another thing I may just, if you allow me to add this, not just the corrupt NGOs create bad feelings about this, but the difficulty you can find trying to intervene locally or with local people is that very often in many areas of Africa and other regions, but we're talking about Africa right now, the multinationals are controlling whatever piece of land may be fruitful. They are, again, this is colonialism. They are getting out of the land everything the land can provide and paying miserable wages to the workers that have to almost be treated like slaves. You pay nothing for the fortune you get from that. In some countries in Africa, you have hotels where you pay the same thing you pay in Paris or New York as far as the fees are concerned, paying 30, 40, 50 euros per month to that worker that has to work 12, 14, 16 hours a day. This is corruption. This is neocolonialism.
Miguel, do you want to?
Eu gostaria de colocar uma questão e antes de mais também agradecer a generosidade do Frei Ventura em estar a partilhar connosco a sua experiência. Eu tenho uma pequena experiência também em África, nomeadamente em Moçambique e Angola, com algumas intervenções na comunidade, nomeadamente em Sofala. Criámos uma moageira, criámos workshops de cultura, de saúde, trabalhamos com instituições locais, quer franciscanos, quer dos Sagrados Corações, quer mesmo muçulmanos, que nomeadamente orientam o circuito de medicamentos e têm uma ação muito interventiva e capaz na comunidade. Mas é claro que todas estas questões e tudo o que se possa fazer e a diferença, como todos podemos compreender na vida de cada pessoa, mesmo no âmbito da saúde, no âmbito da escolaridade, com apadrinhamentos, com alimentação, com doações, com tudo isso, é sempre válida a diferença que podemos fazer na vida de cada pessoa. No entanto, penso que estamos a esquecer muitas vezes que o continente africano também parece que há um interesse em que se mantenha este estado de coisas. Há um circuito muito grande de ONGs e de outro tipo de instituições que pretensamente intervêm socialmente, mas alimentam uma mecânica e uma estrutura tão grande que são uma fonte de rendimento ao fim para uma série de pessoas que esse rendimento não vai diretamente para aqueles que precisam. Para além disso, eu lembro-me que participava em algumas vezes numas reuniões que era da FEC, da Fundação Evangelização e Cultura, e falava-se muitas vezes da advocacia social, da intervenção que nós também podemos ter naquilo que é o obrigar as estruturas do próprio país a olharem para a sua realidade, que isso parece que muitas vezes isso não acontece, porque podemos enviar contentores, ajuda, como eu disse, fará sempre a diferença na vida de uma ou duas pessoas, já será válido, quanto mais em centenas ou milhares, mas é preciso criar e trabalhar ao lado das estruturas locais que fazem parte da própria nação, de cada nação, seja São Tomé ou seja outra qualquer, e ajudá-las a criar as tais infraestruturas que o Miguel também falava há pouco, e criar uma base sustentada de encontro até àquilo que se designava dos objetivos do milénio para cada fase de tempo em que se propunha esse objetivo, que apareceu aí o seu secretário-geral, o António Guterres, que está de mãos atadas com quase 500 milhões de dólares de dívida, nomeadamente dos Estados Unidos e volto só a sintetizar então toda esta questão, que é, obviamente que é uma diferença muito grande tudo aquilo que podemos fazer na vida de uma ou outra pessoa, mas como é que podemos participar e colaborar para as estruturas desses próprios países criarem uma fonte e uma estrutura de rendimento para as suas próprias comunidades, porque tratam-se muitas vezes de países com riquezas vastíssimas. Estou-me a lembrar agora de Moçambique e daquilo que eu presenciei tantas vezes lá, de florestas a serem dizimadas e irem em barcos para a China, por exemplo, ou de outros interesses. Como a gente sabe, a África, nomeadamente, é um centro de grandes interesses económicos e muitas vezes parece que se pretende que se mantenha assim. E lá está, isso daí resulta a tal corrupção, a tal subjugação das estruturas locais de governo às estruturas de interesses maiores. Como é que nós podemos mudar isso? Porque senão será apenas dar o peixe, dar o peixe, dar o peixe e nunca construímos algo de sustentável para que as comunidades sejam verdadeiramente autónomas e livres.
Obrigado, Miguel.
Muito obrigado. Agradeço essa observação. Aqui há necessidade de ir mais fundo em algumas questões que aparentemente deveriam existir e ainda não são uma realidade. Desde logo, a colaboração entre todas as entidades que no mesmo território trabalham e se esforçam e estão presentes. Infelizmente, eu não digo só isto em relação a São Tomé, digo em relação a outras realidades da África onde estamos a trabalhar, existem instituições, ONGs, IPSS, toda esta gente, e algumas delas, eu diria muitas delas, com a sensação de que são a última bolacha do pacote e nós vamos resolver tudo. Então, é muito difícil articular duas entidades que estejam no mesmo terreno para fazerem algum tipo de trabalho comum. Desperdiçam-se energias, desperdiçam-se meios, desperdiçam-se fundos que podiam ser canalizados e organizados de uma maneira muito mais produtiva. Portanto, isto para falar da organização das instituições que localmente trabalham nos diferentes territórios. Depois há também aquilo que eu tenho sentido, alguma falta de acompanhamento, alguma falta de ligação entre as representações diplomáticas portuguesas e as estruturas de voluntariado, por exemplo, que existem nos PALOPs, já para não ir fora dos PALOPs, não? As nossas embaixadas e consulados, etc., serão naturalmente assoberbados com trabalho burocrático, enfim, daquilo que será a sua atividade, mas não existe uma ligação de cooperação, uma ligação de troca de experiências, de troca de know-how, de troca de contactos a nível local, de tal maneira que cada um se sente no território onde está isolado. Se precisar de alguma coisa do consulado ou da embaixada, tantas vezes tem de ir para a fila, esperar, e quando lhe dão audiência, já acabou o tempo de serviço e já voltou para cá. Uma das coisas que eu tenho lutado, e o Miguel Pavão, da Mundo a Sorrir, é exemplo disto, e temos falado sobre isto tantas vezes. O exemplo, por exemplo, de Itália. A Itália reconhece em todos os seus grupos de voluntários organizados que estão em países estrangeiros, reconhece-lhes não um estatuto diplomático, mas reconhece-lhes um estatuto de proteção especial. É capaz de defender os seus direitos. Por exemplo, nós se quisermos ir fazer qualquer tipo de trabalho voluntário para qualquer país de língua oficial portuguesa, se for mais do que 15 dias, temos de pagar o visto. E não são baratos os vistos. Por exemplo, isto. Porque as nossas representações diplomáticas não podem servir de ponte para validar ou não aquilo que é solidariedade no terreno, daquilo que é turismo solidário, que também existe, infelizmente, e em nome de não sei o que, nós vamos passar umas férias ao pé do mar, demos 2 voltinhas na Praça Central e já fizemos uma experiência da África. A maioria das pessoas que vão, não é isto, são pessoas que vão dar o melhor de si mesmas para a construção e para o melhoramento de condições de vida de tanta gente, e estão sozinhos. Depois, também aquilo que é, e isso nós temos experiência disto a um nível maior, aquilo que é a dificuldade do politicamente correto e em relação a Portugal. Ainda muita, como é que se diz, uma má consciência mal digerida. Nós vivemos em Portugal, e isto é alguma coisa de organizado, vivemos em Portugal uma espécie de tentativa de nos fazer ter vergonha da história que fomos e da história que somos. Temos isto tudo muito mal resolvido a nível interno, e isto nota-se também na forma de abordagem das questões. Voltamos outra vez ao politicamente correto, e politicamente correto é sempre o hipocritamente válido. Estou a falar de Moçambique, estou a falar desta terra que me dói, que é uma das minhas pátrias do coração. Eu digo que tenho 3 pátrias: Portugal, onde nasci, Israel, porque é a pátria dos meus antepassados judeus, e Moçambique, onde eu devia ter crescido, devia ter ido para lá aos 2 anos e não fui, por questões várias. Demorei quase 40 anos a chegar a Moçambique, tenho a graça de ter podido estar em Moçambique mais de 10 vezes já. Moçambique diz muito, e as pessoas de Moçambique dizem muito. O norte de Moçambique está há 3 anos a ser chacinado por esta gente pseudo-islâmica, a soldo nós sabemos de quem, para defender os interesses também sabemos de quem, e Portugal está cobardemente calado à espera para não pisar, enfim, o terreno do politicamente correto, porque pode parecer interferência nos assuntos de um país estrangeiro. Sempre que há alguém em sofrimento, deixa de ser um país estrangeiro. É o quintal da casa onde moramos. E aqui as Nações Unidas têm tido um papel, eu diria quase um papel cobarde. Um silêncio inexplicável. E não só em relação a Moçambique, estou a falar de Moçambique porque me dói, mas podemos fazer uma lista onde as vozes das Nações Unidas não se ouvem, porque mais do que nada neste momento, como dizia o Miguel, as Nações Unidas estão, neste momento, o nosso Guterres está mais preocupado em pagar a dívida que tem, que é gigantesca, de uma estrutura que é um elefante branco, que existe, que ocupa espaço, quase como é um elefante, é o piano de cauda na sala. Está lá, ocupa espaço, mas a utilidade, infelizmente, que se vê é pouca, ou pelo menos é pouco comunicada. Posso estar a ser injusto nesta avaliação.
Very good. I want to thank everyone that came to this forum. An hour has passed very, very fast. We haven't tackled the issues, not even a little bit, but we have given you, everyone participating and those that will watch the video afterwards, a glimpse of what we can do and what is being done by Frei Fernando Ventura and by Pierre Bertrand Gondi, each one in their own spheres. And we have understood that it takes a lot of people to come together, a lot of wheels, a lot of hearts to come together to do real effective work. And that is why we should be on the side of those who help and not on the side of those who create difficulties and problems. But if we take anything from today, I think we should take that very good expression, which was, you cannot change the world, but you can change somebody's world, and you can change it beyond recognition. Somebody can be going through darkness, and you can be the ray of shining light that appears in their life. So that's your challenge. That's what you should do. And keep coming to temparcores.org to know about this problem. As you have seen from other global forums, we do not leave the problem unattended. So all the forums that we have done until now that were about COVID-19 and the impact on our daily lives. They were about forest fires, and they were about homelessness in Europe. All of them have their own reports. They have more information. They have a media watch where you can inform yourself about data about this problem and how to get in touch. And in next month, we will be talking about poverty in South America. And we'll list the invited guests in the next few weeks. I'm sure that you like the forum and you'll be taking part in it. So thank you, Frei Fernando Ventura, for
Thank you. Thank you.
granting us this
God bless
small
you.
hour. For us, it was extremely important. And to have your extensive experience shown this simple way to all of us, I think it's very inspiring. Also, the way that you tackle transparency in both works that we talked about, the Powder Milk Bank and also Betania, you are so transparent that we can exactly know who gave what and when. So this is very, very different, distinctive, important. I think it's a lesson for everyone, and it's something that we should take on and be inspired by. Thank you very much, Fernando.
Thank you. All the best.
Bertrand, Pierre
God bless you.
Bertrand, and
God
we'll
bless
be
you.
in touch. Thank you for the participation in the forum. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.